Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is John McLean, and I'm a Sales and Marketing Executive at TruckScience. So this webinar will cover the advantages and disadvantages of adding pusher and tag axles. I will demonstrate how adding axles increases the carrying capacity of a vehicle whilst complying with US federal bridge laws. We will also validate our final build against state regulations to highlight how the weight limits differ between federal and state laws. To demonstrate the process of modifying a vehicle, I'll take you through a live demo using our axle weight calculator. We'll start with a 6x4 chassis and a 16-foot dump body to determine our baseline carrying capacity. Next, we'll add our pusher axle and compare the new carrying capacity of to our baseline vehicle. And in step 3, I'll increase the wheelbase by 3 feet to show you how axle spacing affects the overall bridge limit and turning radius. And finally, we'll add a second pusher to a longer body to optimize our dump truck. So I'll just switch over to our axle weight calculator now. Okay, so we'll start by selecting one of these manufacturers for our dump truck example. I'll choose here Volvo VHD 6x4, and I'll go for this one here with the 224-inch wheelbase. So this vehicle is already pre-configured with some default dimensions, chassis weights, and axle ratings. But you should always check these values and match them with your proposal document from your chassis supplier. For example, we could start by changing our wheelbase here by selecting the override, or else we could also change our bogie spread and afterframe here if necessary. So this chassis weighs just over 1,600 pounds, and if you need to make a change to the weights, 16,000 pounds, sorry. If you need to make a change to the weights, you can click on either the front or the rear axle here to open the vehicle menu to that particular axle. So here we can change the chassis weights if needs be, and also the gross axle weight rating. If you're not sure about an input, what you can do is you can click on the little information icon where this says now the gross axle weight rating is the lesser of the manufacturer's axle, suspension, and tire ratings. So further down here, I'll just show you our bridge limit for the front axle will be 20,000 pounds. That is according to the US federal bridge laws. And the permissible maximum for the front axle will be the lesser of the manufacturer rating and the bridge limit. So therefore, that'll end up being 14,600 pounds. Now, it is easy to forget about tire spec, but I would recommend that you check the tires, especially the tire width, because this can affect the regulation maximum in certain cases, especially for pusher and tag axles where we normally run with a single tire fitment. We can make the same changes for the rear axles here, and under total, we can make adjustments here. And actually, we'll make an adjustment here to the GVWR, the gross vehicle weight rating. I'm going to update that to 67,600 pounds, which the manufacturer has approved for this vehicle. So the permissible maximum will still, however, be the bridge limit of 51,500 pounds. Right, so we've set up our vehicle. We're ready to add our body and equipment. But before I do that, I'll just give you a quick overview of this dashboard down here. So here your calculations will be validated against manufacturer's limits, organization's standards, and also regulatory compliance. You can even add your own favorite measurements here at the bottom. So if I drill down to regulatory compliance, you can see that we're validating against the federal regulations. Okay, so now what we can do is we can add our body. So what I'm going to do is I'll go over here to my vehicle body menu and go down to a dump body. And I'll pick one from my personal library, but we could also add a template if we wanted to add a fully customizable body from scratch. We could also go to the public and distributor library to pick a body from an existing manufacturer. So if you were a bodybuilder or equipment manufacturer and you have dealers or upfitters for your products, then you have the option of setting up your own unique distributor library and approving who has access to these products. But for today's example, I've already used the DXF import feature to add a 16-foot CSLE dump body from my personal library. So I'll add that now, and I'll just drag it a little bit back from the cab. That's probably a little bit too far. So I'll just manually go 4 inches. Okay, so we still need to add a hoist for this. So again, I can go to my equipment over here and I can go down to the other category and I'll go for my sample dump body hoist. And I'll also drag that into position as well. Maybe just a tiny bit back. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Okay. So once we've added the body, the software will automatically calculate the maximum permissible payload, which in this case is just a little bit over 23,000 pounds. And if you go down to the weights table here, you can see the payload figure is also there. And you'll notice that our front axle is the limiting factor. So the front axle has a utilization score of 100%, which doesn't even make it the limiting factor. And we still have a little bit of unused capacity on the rear and on the total there. So if you prefer, you can specify your own payload by overriding the payload and changing it. Let's, for example, just for an example, I'll change this to 24,000 pounds. Okay, and we'll see there that will immediately highlight the front axle to indicate an overload, and also add a red cross here to our manufacturer's limits on the dashboard. So at this point, we are exceeding that gross axle weight rating of 14,600. But since we do have a little bit of unused capacity on the rear here, we could try and shift this body backwards. So I'll do that now by moving it back a little bit further. Okay, so you can see in this position, as I move the body, you'll notice that we're within the limits. And if I move the body even further back here, we become overloaded on the rear axle. But this time, we get a red cross next to regulatory compliance. And that's because we're exceeding the bridge limit of 34,000 pounds there on our rear tandem. I'll just undo those changes before I move on and put the payload back. We'll have another look at the utilization. We'll have another look at that utilization on the rear here, and we could tweak this calculation to squeeze a bit more payload out of it. But since we're already utilizing the overall bridge limit up to 90%, there's not much room to get more payload out of that axle layout. So we've pretty much reached the maximum, although we're not near that maximum in terms of the gross vehicle weight rating. Now, we could add that gross vehicle weight rating as a favorite measurement so we can observe it. So I will actually do that. I'll go up to settings here and go to favorite measurements. And I'll just scroll down to, actually, I'll add in CDL required as well. And I'll look for utilization as a percentage of GVWR. There we go. And I'll add those as our favorite measurements. And you'll see now that I've added those, they appear here on the dashboard. So we can see now that a driver will indeed need a commercial driver's license for this vehicle, and that we are only utilizing roughly 70% of the gross vehicle weight rating of 67,600 that we added in earlier. So this is a good indication that we can still add axles to the vehicle to increase that overall carrying capacity. So there are a few things to consider when adding axles. For today's example, we'll focus mainly on the benefits to overall carrying capacity, but we'll also take into account chassis space and the effect on turning radius. So to add an axle, you go up here to your vehicle menu and go to weights and axles, and we have our plus icon. So in cases where the front axle is the limiting factor, as it is here, we get the most benefit by adding a pusher axle. And that's because the pusher axle takes some of the load off the front axle. If the rear axle was the limiting factor, then we could either add a pusher or tag. But in our case, I'll add a pusher because we do have sufficient chassis space there. But before I do that, just take note of the payload down here, which is 23,000 pounds for our baseline 6x4 vehicle, and the overall carrying capacity of 51,500 pounds. I'll refer back to those numbers when I add it. Okay, so now that I've added that pusher axle, you'll see that the overall carrying capacity has increased by 4,500 pounds and our payload has increased by roughly 6,000 pounds. So the limiting factor is now the triaxle group on the rear, which is limited to 42,000 pounds, and we're nearing that 100% utilization on the overall bridge carrying capacity. So if you wanted to see a detailed breakdown of the new bridge limits, you can go up to the bridge view. And you can see here are all the key bridge groups that are shown with the distances between axles and the permissible bridge limits. So for the outer bridge group down here, from axle 1 to 4, we have a distance of 21 feet, which limits us to 56,000 pounds. And I'll go back to my summary view now. Okay, so we've accepted the default values for our pusher axle that we've added, but I'll spend a bit of time on the changes that you could make here. So for starters, you could change the position of the axle from the driven axle, which is defaulted to 49 inches here, but you can change that also. You can select the pusher axle to open its menu with all the input values that you can specify for your pusher axle. So just to go through them here, for starters, you could change the weight of the axle, which is defaulted now to 1,350 pounds. The gross axle weight rating here is 13,000 pounds, and the bridge limit is 11,600 pounds. The bridge limit is due to the tire restrictions, specifically 500 pounds per inch of tire width, which is the minimum that any state can impose on an interstate highway system. And you can obviously change your tires here as well, but we'll come back to that in a minute. All right, our permissible limit on the front axle is going to be there for 11,600 pounds. But slightly further down here, you'll see we have probably the most important input value, and that is the percentage of gross weight carried by the pusher axle. You can use this percentage to increase the actual weight that is carried by the pusher axle. So if we look at the weights table, you'll see that the actual weight at the moment, there it is just over 10,000 pounds. So we are not near that 11,600 pounds yet. But if you wanted to, you can increase this percentage to carry more weight on the pusher axle. So the default value is now 24.5%, and that's determined by the ratio between the gross axle weight ratings and the pusher as the driven axles. So just keep an eye on that. Keep an eye also on the front and the rear axles here. When I increase this weight slightly on the pusher axle, we will expect the front axle weight to be slightly reduced, and the same for the driven axles when we put more downforce on that pusher axle. So I'll just go ahead and increase that by about 1 or 2% and keep an eye on those numbers. So you'll notice that the front axle is now slightly lighter, and so is the driven axle. You will need to experiment with the weight on the pusher axle to get the optimum for your application. It takes a little bit of trial and error to get this right. You can increase and decrease the percentages until you optimize the distribution of your axles. But for now, I will just put that back to 24.5%. In practice, you would control this through air pressure in the suspension for the axle. Um, I'll also show you here the axle tab. So something you can do here as well is you can raise and lower the axle. So if I raise it there and take a look at the payload, you'll see our payload is 20,000 pounds. And if I lower it again, you can see that we'll carry nearly 30,000 pounds. Of course, we can change the tires again, but in this case, it's not even necessary to put wider tires because we're not fully utilizing that gross axle weight rating for this axle. So if we take another look at our dashboard down here, we'll see that the gross vehicle weight rating has increased. Sorry, the utilization, the percentage of GVWR there has increased from about 70% to 80%. So we're getting closer, but we're not near that 100% yet, which indicates that we can still increase our carrying capacity by, say, we could add another pusher axle. The first consideration will be whether we have enough chassis space here. And it may look like we do, but in practice, that depends on the layout of the fuel tank, the batteries, and the exhaust, which may occupy this space. So to demonstrate that, I'll go to the equipment over here again. I'll click a little plus icon, and I'll add a 75-gallon fuel tank. And I'll just drag that here in behind the steps. Uh, okay, so you can see now that once that is in position, that we won't have enough space for that additional pusher axle yet. So what we need to do is we need to extend that wheelbase. So there are two things we can do to extend the wheelbase. The first is we could go up to this toolbar here and use the swap vehicle feature. So if we find a suitable chassis with a longer wheelbase, that chassis could already have the appropriate or matching chassis weights for the front or rear axles. So we wouldn't need to do a manual adjustment. In the case where we need to change the wheelbase manually, we could do that ourselves, and I'll demonstrate how we're going to do that now. But actually, I'll just take a quick drink of water. While I show you that, I want to show you the effect that this will have on the turning radius. So let's go over here to our turning radius view, our smallest turning radius view. And I'll also open our vehicle menu here so I can update the wheelbase as we go. So I'm going to increase this wheelbase here. But while I do that, keep an eye on the curb to curb radius. It will increase as I increase that wheelbase. You can also look at the increase of the overall bridge carrying capacity. And I'll just use these tickers here to slowly bring it up by 3 feet, which should be 260 inches. And you can just keep an eye on those figures as I bring it up. Okay. There. Okay, so you'll have noticed that the turning radius has increased by about 4 feet, and the overall carrying capacity has increased by roughly 2,000 pounds. So by default, um, the pusher axle here is a steering axle. As you can see, you can toggle that to non-steering and have a look at the effect it'll have on turning radius. But of course, this will add a considerable amount of tire scrub, which is why some regulations make it mandatory for the pusher axle to be a steering axle. And we'll keep this as a steering axle for now. And I'll just go back to my other view, side view that is. Okay, so we can see there that that body needs to be changed, but I'll do that shortly. So what we'll do first, because we've extended that wheelbase, we need to adjust our chassis weight. So the manual way of doing this would be to click on our front axle and just increase that by 100 pounds. And we've got our rear axle there, and we'll also increase that by 100 pounds. Um, Okay, so your chassis supplier can probably give you more accurate values for that, uh, for changes to the wheelbase. At this point, it's a little bit of an estimate, but roughly 200 to 300 pounds for the extra 3 feet of chassis length should be sufficient. And it is something we checked with the manufacturer in this case, and they gave us a value of about 2,000 pounds for the extension. So this body obviously now isn't suitable for the chassis, so I'll go ahead and remove that. I'll go back here to add body, dump body again, and my personal library from my DXF import, and I'll add my 19-foot body. And I'll drag that back as well, a little bit from the cab. Also adjust that hoist as well. Um, okay, so now we're ready to add that second pusher axle. So we do have enough space for it now. So we'll go back to our vehicle menu, go to weights and axles and our plus icon. So again, keep an eye on that overall carrying capacity and our payload and see if it increases. Okay, so we can see there now that when I add that pusher, it increased that overall carrying capacity increased by 5,000 pounds to 63,000 pounds. And our payload now is just a little bit over 36,000 pounds. So looking at our dashboard here again, the overall utilization of our gross vehicle weight rating is now at 93%. So we're getting pretty close to that 100%. But this is as far as we'll go in terms of modifying our dump truck. So comparing this to our original 6x4 version, our overall carrying capacity has increased by 11,500 pounds and our payload has increased by 13,000 pounds. So this just shows you how beneficial it is to add axles to a vehicle. All right, so up to now, we validated our calculations against the federal regulations. So what we're going to do now is we'll see how the vehicle will perform in the Idaho state roads. So if I go to my settings here again, go to regulations applied, and I'll remove the federal one, and I'll type in Idaho, and I'll go for state roads. I'll deal with interstate in a minute. Okay. Okay, so now you'll notice that our overall bridge carrying capacity has increased by about 5,000 pounds. So that is because Idaho applies its own bridge formula on state roads, which is considerably higher than what is allowed on the interstate highway system. Our payload has increased now as well to just under 41,000 pounds. So that's increased by 5,000 pounds to get to nearly 41,000 pounds. And if we have a look at our axles here, you'll notice that Idaho allows slightly higher weights on the tandems. So we got 37,800 pounds there instead of the normal 34,000 pounds. And the pusher axle can go all the way up to 13,000 pounds because Idaho allows 16 pounds per inch of tire width. And oh, we can see now that we have actually utilized 100% of our gross vehicle weight rating as well. But let's assume that this vehicle also needs to go on the interstate roads. So what we can do is we can validate against state and interstate regulations. So I'll go back to Idaho again and apply the interstate ones. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, I'll just lock the payload to prevent the software from recalculating it, and then I'll add it. Okay, so that's interesting. So you'll notice that the vehicle will be legal on the state roads, but overloaded on the interstate roads, hence the red cross. So we apply the lowest weight limits to the weights table here, which takes us back to 63,000 pounds for the overall carrying capacity. So for this vehicle to be legal on both state and interstate roads, we could deselect that override that I put in earlier, and that'll allow the software to calculate the maximum permissible payload again, which should go back to 36,000 pounds. And then we get our green ticks for both of those. And the states are there, and you can validate against 5 states at once. And that actually brings me to the end of the demo there, Martin. If there's any questions that came up throughout that I can deal with, or we can deal with.
Yes, John, thanks. I can maybe just answer two questions, yeah? So the first question, I have already answered it in the chat or in the Q&A there, but I'll just go through it again. Does the application include vehicles for the solid waste collection industry, specifically front and side loaders? And maybe there are two parts to this question. Do we cater for the vehicles that are used in this industry? Yes, we do. And also, obviously, the bodies. Maybe just to answer that first question about the vehicles, maybe you can just go back to the home screen there, John, if you're done with that
Yeah.
particular exercise, and just to show us the brand cards there. So if you're looking for specific vehicles used in this industry, you'll see right at the top there, Autocar, Battle Motors, further down, Peterbilt, typical manufacturers that manufacture vehicles for this industry. You'll find them there. If you don't find the particular or specific model that you require, you can use the request a vehicle feature, which John is pointing out there, to request that vehicle. And some of these manufacturers actually subscribe to the software as well. Then we can either get in touch directly with them to request the spec for you, or we'll source it from their bodybuilder portal on their website. So we'd always do our best to source the vehicle specs for you. With regards to the bodies, the front and side loader bodies, many of the garbage body manufacturers also subscribe to our software, and they typically set up what we call a unique distributor library. So they have all their bodies in their own unique library, and they approve who has access to their bodies. So if you do require access to specific garbage bodies, please let us know, and we will get in touch with the manufacturer to see if they will approve access for you. So yeah, and I mean, this industry has quite a few sort of unique EV chassis as well. I know we have added some of those. So you will even find some EV models there. Then we just had another question there. Does the regulation account, or do the regulations account for certain state refuse permit limits which exceed federal limits? And also, can certain permits be added? So to answer that question, we already have quite a long list of permits, and you can just click on settings there, John. Yeah, and if you in the search there, maybe just search on for permits, and you can scroll up and down that list, and you'll see there are a quite a few permits in that list. We may not have the specific permit that you need for, say, refuse exemptions or higher weight limits. If you don't find that in the list, you can also request that we add that specific permit for a specific state, and we will then source the regulations and the permit details and add a permit over here. So absolutely, we want to put in as many different regulations and permits that are available into the options here. So hopefully that answers that question as well. And we will get in touch with you after the webinar just to get more details from you regarding maybe vehicles, bodies that you need, and also with regards to which permits you need for which state. Okay, there are two more questions that have come through now. Okay, that's just a comment there. Thank you for the demonstration. So we still have about 10 minutes or so. So we're happy to take a few more questions. And John will also wrap up with a few more slides. And we'll just, I'll keep monitoring the questions. Um, there is a question about trailers as well, if you can maybe just add more details. Then you can also request features for the software. Just to give you an idea of what we're working on at the moment, we are in the process of getting our ISO 27001 certification, and this will create opportunities where we can integrate with equipment manufacturers such as crane, liftgate, and fridge unit manufacturers, where we can integrate with their product catalog and source uh, their products in real time with their specific options. So to give you access to accurate information from the equipment manufacturers. So that ISO 27001 is a very important process that we're going through at the moment. And then we're also working on the graphic side, the display of the graphic to make the graphics sharper, clearer, and also to allow you to import larger DXF files and also more drawing objects, such as splines, for example. So the DXF import feature is also a very important feature for adding your products or other products or making products available, your products available to other users of the software. All right, John, I'll just hand back to you again and I'll just keep an eye on the questions there.
Yeah, I'll check in with you near the end, Martin, just to see if there's any more questions.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll go back to my slides. So to sum up, here are a few things to consider when adding pusher and tag axles. To start, the manufacturer's gross vehicle weight rating must be adequate for the additional weight. You can talk to your local chassis supplier to confirm the gross vehicle weight rating and that the vehicle is suitable for adding more axles. Next, you'll have to choose between pusher and tag axles. You'll need to consider how each affects weight distribution. The final position of the axles will also be affected by the wheelbase and the available chassis space. If you have to increase the wheelbase to accommodate additional axles, you will need to determine the effect on the turning radius and decide whether the axles need to be steering. You'll also need to consider the required gross axle weight rating and tire size for your additional axles. Your choice will be driven by the application and the regulations under which the vehicle will operate. So to get the optimal balance of weight over all axles, you should test a few scenarios to work out how much weight each pusher or tag axle needs to carry and how to set up the air pressure and the suspension to achieve the required weight. And lastly, and very importantly, you will need to understand how overall carrying capacity is affected by federal and state regulations in the area where the vehicle will operate. You remember that there was a difference of about £5,000 there between federal regulations and the state and other state laws. So for our quad axle dump truck there, I've used our axle weight calculator to work through these examples today. If you'd like to try the app yourself, please visit truckscience.com to register for a fully functional 7-day free trial, and you'll be up and running in minutes. And Martin, just another opportunity there. If there's any other questions, because I know we have a few minutes left.
Yeah, John, quite a few questions have come in
Oh,
now.
good.
I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, regarding the question about the trailer, um, do we cater for, or can you build a trailer with a loading system built in? For example, a conveyor belt system. So that would obviously add weight to the trailer. I'm thinking something like a walking floor type feature in the trailer. So as long as you have a drawing of the trailer for us, and the kingpin weights and the rear axle group weights, we can definitely add manufacturer trailers to our library, or you can use a template feature to start off with a trailer chassis and put your specific body on there. And you can even use the DXF import feature to add the body onto the trailer. So again, we'll definitely follow up with you on that to see if we can help you get the trailer that you need. Then the question, does that include hook lift brands? Assuming that refers to the um, earlier question where I mentioned the unique distributor library. Yes, it does. There are also hook lift manufacturers who have added their products to a unique library. And on request, we can also get approval for you to have access to those products. Um, then a question about a specific trailer here from Wabash. If you are struggling to source the information from the manufacturer, say a trailer manufacturer or equipment manufacturer, um, obviously the easiest way to get the information is if it's in the public domain. Either you or we can go to the website and get the information. If the information is not in the public domain, we would typically get in touch with one of our contacts at that manufacturer, or if you can provide us with a contact there, then we can use that as well. And we'll do our best to source the technical specifications for their products and add them to the library. And understandably, some manufacturers do not want their information in the public domain. And in cases like that, there may be an opportunity for the manufacturer to do the weight distribution calculation for you. Okay, and then let's just see. Yeah, there's a question about installing bodies onto fifth wheel style flat deck trailers. Is this type of weight distribution analysis available? Fifth wheel style flat deck trailers. Okay, so we do have, that could be something like I may just need to double check the exact details of this trailer, but we cater for semi trailers. We cater for, say, a B double combination where you have two trailers. So I will get in touch with you afterwards just to find out if we cater for your specific type of trailer or trailer combination. Then okay, if you are adding pusher axles, and there's a question here about adding a pusher axle to a tractor unit, and not and maybe struggling to find the option where to change the percentage of load on the pusher. Again, that option is there if you add a pusher to a tractor unit. So I will also get in touch with you just to make sure that you find that option. You can normally just click on the pusher axle to open the uh, values for that you can change on that pusher axle. There could be a reason why those are not visible, and I can check that with you. John, I think that is probably it for the questions.
Okay,
Yeah, we will
perfect.
definitely follow up on all of these questions if we haven't answered them in full. So if you still have any other questions, John will give you an opportunity now uh, and explain how you can still ask them.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I will end this webinar shortly. But before you go, you can rate the webinar and leave any questions or comments there in the little box, as Martin said, that you'd like to share, and we'll get back to you. So if you'd like to set up a personalized demo, for instance, of the app, you can leave your contact details there in the comments box, and we'll gladly set that up for you. So thank you very much for joining us today. I'll end the webinar now. We look forward to your feedback and have a great rest of your day, and goodbye.